Have you ever felt tired, not from caring too much, but from carrying things that were never truly yours? Maybe it's expectations you didn't choose, an identity you quietly outgrew, or pain you still haven't learned to let go. Today isn't about doing more. It's about gently putting down what's already weighing you down. Right now, life feels uncertain. The economy shifts overnight, inflation creeps into every decision. Headlines shout about wars we never chose. Inside, many of us are quietly struggling with burnout, loneliness, and anxiety about a future we can't quite see. But thousands of years ago, the Buddha quietly reminded us, peace isn't found by holding tighter, but by learning to release. This video isn't about repeating ancient wisdom. It's about using it, right here, right now, to help you gently let go of the invisible weight you've been silently carrying. Let's begin this journey together. Section 1. Seeing clearly what we carry. Sometimes what burdens us most isn't what we're doing, but what we're silently holding. 1. Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, even so the wise are not affected by praise or blame. You've spent years trying to be enough in someone else's eyes. Parents, partners, colleagues, strangers on the internet. A compliment uplifts you, but a single judgment can destroy your whole day. You wonder, why do their opinions feel louder than my own truth? Because somewhere along the way you were taught to outsource your self-worth. But true inner peace doesn't react, it remains. Buddhism doesn't tell you to ignore others, but to build an inner self that isn't shaken every time the wind changes. You are allowed to stop proving and start living. 2. Not by wealth nor by birth does one become noble, but by truth and righteousness. Maybe lately you've been waking up with quiet dread, checking your bank account, calculating if what you have is enough. Not enough to live richly, but simply to survive. A 2024 Pew Research survey found that over 68% of Americans under 45 feel constant financial insecurity, with many reporting they feel personally inadequate, even when they're working full-time. You are not lazy. You're living in a system where the cost of peace is often more than the price of survival. Buddhism reminds us, your worth is not your wage. Your dignity doesn't fluctuate with inflation. You are noble when you are truthful, kind, and awake to what truly matters. You are not underpaid in worth, only misunderstood by a noisy world. 3. Those who cling to perceptions and views wander the world offending people. You ever find yourself trapped in needing to be right? You scroll online, waiting to react, debate, prove a point. But all that tension only tightens you inside. Sometimes it's not about being wrong or right. It's about choosing peace over ego. The less you cling to being right, the more space you'll find to feel free. 4. There is no fire like passion, no shark like hatred, no snare like folly, no torrent like craving. Desire often arrives dressed as motivation, but it quietly burns from the inside. You chase, achieve, reach, and still feel empty. That's not ambition failing you. It's craving pretending to be purpose. The Buddha didn't ask you to have no goals. He asked you to stop letting goals own you. 5. Health is the greatest gift. Contentment, the greatest wealth. You've been pushing non-stop, answering emails at midnight, smiling through fatigue, convincing yourself that this is just how adulting feels. Gallup's 2024 Global Workplace Report shows that 76% of full-time workers in the U.S. experience burnout regularly, with many reporting they feel guilty when resting, even on weekends. You've been praised for your productivity so long, you forgot you were human before you were useful. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, your rest is not optional. It is sacred. You are not here to prove you can suffer through the system. You are here to live, and living begins where exhaustion ends. You are not more valuable burnt out. You are only more lost. 6. The world is afflicted by death and decay, but the wise do not grieve, having understood the nature of the world. You keep trying to hold everything together, your plans, your people, your identity, but things keep falling apart, slowly or suddenly, and each time a quiet panic rises. Why can't I stop it? But what if it's not your job to hold everything forever? What if it's your work to hold gently and let go gracefully? The Buddha didn't say loss wouldn't hurt. He said suffering fades when we stop expecting permanence from impermanent things. Maybe your pain isn't from what left. Maybe it's from the belief that it should have stayed. What leaves wasn't wrong. It was just done. 7. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. Your thoughts are not harmless. They are seeds. If you water fear, it grows. If you water compassion, it blossoms. Guard your mind, not like a prison, but like a sacred garden. 8. If you find no one to support you on the spiritual path, walk alone. You're surrounded by people, online, at work, even at home, but something still feels missing. You scroll for hours, you answer politely, but at night, there's a soft ache. Why do I feel so alone when I'm never really alone? The U.S. Surgeon General recently declared loneliness a public health crisis, with over 1 in 2 Americans reporting they often feel invisible. But Buddhism teaches this. Being alone is not the same as being lost. Sometimes solitude is not a void, but an invitation. You don't need a crowd to feel connected. You need one honest moment with yourself. You are not alone. You are just being called back to you. 9. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. You've read dozens of books, heard endless advice, but your heart still feels loud, unsettled, unsure. Sometimes it isn't about hearing more, it's about hearing one thing deeply. Silence isn't emptiness, it's the echo of something real. 10. All conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. You hold on to what hurts, thinking if you just hold tighter, it might change. But everything shifts. That's not tragedy, it's nature. When you finally accept impermanence, you stop fighting the current. You learn to float. What are you holding that isn't holding you back, but holding you down? Not everything heavy is yours to carry. Maybe today you loosen your grip, just a little. And if a line stayed with you, drop it in the comments, not to impress, but to share the load. Because sometimes someone else might need the same sentence that's holding you right now. Section 2, Unlearning the Noise. Sometimes what weighs us down isn't what we carry, but the noise we believe. 11. He who envies others does not obtain peace of mind. You scroll through highlight reels of other people's lives, weddings, vacations, promotions, and wonder, why not me? But that ache isn't always jealousy. Sometimes it's grief for the life you thought you'd have by now. Buddhist wisdom teaches, envy is a sign we've lost our anchor. Peace returns not when others fall behind, but when you stop trying to catch up to a timeline you never chose. 12. Better to live one day seeing the rise and fall of things than to live 100 years without ever seeing the truth. You were told to build a life, climb the ladder, find the partner, buy the house. You did or tried, and yet something still feels off. Empty maybe, or just numb. Harvard's 2023 study on modern dissatisfaction found that 42% of adults under 40 feel they're living someone else's idea of success. They followed the path, but never paused to ask, do I even want this? The Buddha reminds us, it's better to live one honest day awake than an entire life on autopilot. If you're lost, maybe you're finally noticing. If you're questioning, maybe you're finally waking up. You don't have to keep walking a path just because you started on it. 13. Delight in heedfulness. Guard well your thoughts. You spend hours protecting your passwords, your home, your phone, but how often do you guard your own thoughts? One careless loop of self-blame can undo days of progress. Train your mind like you'd train a muscle, gently, consistently, with compassion. 14. Just as a snake sheds its skin, we must shed our past over and over again. You think healing is a one-time moment, but letting go is layered. Every time you release something old, an identity, a story, a scar, you make room for something more real to grow. Shedding isn't failure, it's renewal. 15. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. But what if the person you're hating is yourself? You replay your mistakes, you criticize your reflection, you punish yourself daily in ways you wouldn't treat a stranger. Mind UK reports that over 67% of people with anxiety or depression say their inner critic is the most damaging voice in their life, and most of them learned it from childhood. Buddhism doesn't ask you to lie to yourself, but it does ask, what would happen if you spoke to yourself with love even once? You don't heal by becoming someone new. You heal by learning to sit gently with who you already are. You don't have to fight your darkness, you just have to stop hurting your own light. 16. As the Fletcher whittles and makes straight his arrows, so the master directs his straying thoughts. Your mind will wander, it will spiral, catastrophize, imagine worst-case scenarios. The goal isn't control, it's direction. Catch your thoughts kindly and point them toward the light. 17. The wise man makes an island which no flood can overwhelm. You've been through more than you admit. Some days, even standing feels like a victory. But every quiet act of resilience, every time you breathe instead of breaking, you're building that island. You're not weak. You're anchoring. 18. There is no fear for one whose mind is not filled with desires. You cling to the job, the relationship, the plan, not because you love it, but because it's familiar. Even when it hurts, it feels safer than the unknown. Underneath that clinging is desire. Not always for more, but for control, for predictability, for certainty in a world that refuses to stay still. A study by the American Psychological Association 2023 found that 74% of adults under 45 feel increased anxiety in uncertain environments, often choosing familiar suffering over unfamiliar peace. We stay in old roles, old pain, old versions of ourselves, just to avoid stepping into a blank space. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us, fear softens the moment desire loosens. You don't have to let go of everything today, just loosen your grip where it's hurting you most. The tighter you hold, the heavier it becomes. Choose peace over certainty. 19. Whatever a monk keeps pursuing with his thinking and pondering, that becomes the inclination of his awareness. You may not realize it, but every thought you repeat is a brick in the house you live in. If you keep rehearsing fear, You'll move through the world cautiously, even when it's safe. If you nurture kindness, you'll begin to see softness in others, even where you once saw threat. This isn't just about thinking positive. It's about becoming conscious of what you're feeding your mind. Because where your thoughts go, your life quietly follows. 20. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will follow you like your shadow. You've been taught to chase happiness, goals, money, attention. But what if happiness isn't something you chase, but something that naturally follows you? When your intentions are clean, when you act from compassion, when you speak with gentleness, when you let go of proving, joy stops being a destination and becomes a quiet companion. You don't have to look for it. Just live so honestly. It can't help but walk beside you. Sometimes it's not the world that's too loud. It's the beliefs we inherited but never questioned. What thought do you keep repeating that no longer fits the life you're ready to live? Section 3. Living lighter. Living true. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means creating space to live more honestly, more lightly, and more fully. 21. As a bee gathers nectar and moves on without harming the flower, so the wise dwell in the world. You've been taught to go after what you want, but never how to move through the world without damage, without taking more than you need, without burning yourself or others in the process. Buddhism teaches presence without possession. To be here deeply but not cling. To love but not grasp. To succeed but not dominate. That's not weakness. That's mastery. 22. Few among men are they who cross to the farther shore. The rest merely run up and down the bank on this side. You grew up with silent expectations. Be the good child. Choose the safe job. Don't disappoint. And even now as an adult, those voices linger, whispering through every decision. Is this what I want or what I was taught to want? A 2023 study from the University of Michigan found that nearly 61% of adults aged 30 to 50 report making major life decisions, careers, marriage, parenting, based on family pressure, not personal clarity. Buddhism reminds us that not everyone crosses to their own truth. Most run up and down the shores of obligation, waiting for permission to be free. But you don't need permission, you need honesty, and one small, courageous step toward the life that's calling you. Inner compass. The farther shore isn't far. It's just on the other side of being true to yourself. 23. Better it is to live one day seeing the rise and fall of things than to live 100 years without ever seeing the truth. You're told life is about longevity. More years, more savings, more plans. But what if the goal isn't more time, but more truth? One honest moment can change a lifetime. And one day awake is better than a century asleep. 24. Let a man avoid evil deeds as a man who loves life avoids poison. You think evil is dramatic, loud, violent, but most harm starts small. A bitter word left unchecked, a lie told to protect pride, a choice made out of fear. Wisdom is recognizing the quiet poisons and choosing to live clean. 25. Conquer the angry man with love. Conquer the ill-natured man with kindness. You've learned to keep yourself small, polished, palatable. To be liked instead of seen. To be calm when you're hurting. To be perfect when you're breaking. This isn't peace, it's performance. A 2022 study by Psychology Today revealed that over 70% of working adults regularly mask their emotions at work and in family life, creating higher rates of depression and disconnection. Buddhism doesn't ask you to be passive. It asks you to meet the world with truth, not theater. You don't need to conquer anger by hiding yours. You can face it with kindness and choose something more honest. Peace isn't who you pretend to be. It's who you are when pretending stops. 26. Just as a solid tree is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not shaken by praise or blame. You've shaped yourself around other people's approval. A compliment lifts you, a criticism breaks you. But every time you bend to please, you drift further from who you really are. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, peace doesn't come from constant validation. It comes from being rooted, like a tree, in your own truth. You don't need to react to every storm. You can just remain. 27. Just as rain penetrates a poorly thatched house, so lust penetrates an undeveloped mind. Not lust for people, lust for more. More likes, more money, more validation, but without wisdom, it floods your house, and soon you're drowning in things that never meant to keep you afloat. What if simplicity is shelter? What if less is more than enough? 28. The one who has conquered himself is a far greater hero than one who has defeated 1,000 men in battle. You're always doing, fixing, improving, but when was the last time you were simply still? Modern studies, e.g. American Psychological Association 2023, show that over 70% of young professionals feel guilty for resting, even when exhausted. Rest feels dangerous, like laziness, like slipping behind. But the Buddha calls us to a deeper battle, not against the world, but against the belief that doing is the only way to matter. Conquering yourself means learning to stop, to rest without apology, to exist without earning it. Stillness is not weakness, it's mastery. 29. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. You've heard advice, podcasts, courses, books, but wisdom doesn't always speak loud. Sometimes it's one sentence, quiet, simple, real, that finally lets you exhale. Today, maybe this is that sentence. 30. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise man, gathering it little by little, fills himself with good. Healing doesn't come all at once. It's not a breakthrough, it's a slow practice. Every deep breath, every honest word, every gentle choice, they count, they're building you, even when you don't see it yet. You've come far, you've paused, you've seen yourself more clearly. Now the question is simple. What truth are you ready to stop hiding from? You're not behind, you're not broken, you're just waking up in a world that rewards speed, silence, and survival. But Buddhist wisdom asks something braver of you: to stay slow, to stay kind, to stay soft in a world that hardened you too early. You don't need a new version of yourself. You need to come home to the one you buried under shoulds. You're not alone. You're not late. You're just returning. Letting go isn't something you do all at once. It's 100 tiny choices: to breathe instead of brace, to listen instead of numb, to stay instead of run. If you've made even one of those choices today, you're already healing. And healing doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be honest. If even one quote met you where you are, I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe, not for numbers, but for reminders, for space, for softness, for truth. And if a line stayed with you, leave it in the comments, not to impress, but to remind someone else you're not alone.